Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my spiteful neighbor is mega jealous of my brand new car and ended up towing it away illegally. I ended up suing her to get some justice. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So the woman that lives 2 doors down from me is an absolute terror and has been from the moment I met her. As a guy that is very clearly Indian, you can imagine that I get a lot of hate, especially in modern times in Pakistan. Most people play it off as something else or just try to be quietly racist towards me. Dirty looks crossing the street, etc. Karen on the other hand though, Karen has no issues flying her racism flag high in the air and being loud about it. This Karen tried to start a petition in the neighborhood to try and make certain requirements for people to live here. She cannot claim race specifically, but does tell people that with these new things, people of other races probably cannot afford to live here. She has no idea what my job even is, but being an investment banker, nothing she can do will make it financially too hard to live here. In fact, I was able to buy myself a beautiful new BMW. She seemed to take me getting a new car personally and had very strong opinions about it. She came to me and went on an absolute rant of how I was not allowed to have the car. I like to play this game where I push until the other person's prejudice about me is on full display. So with her ranting how I was not allowed to have a car this nice, I just kept pushing her for explaining it to me like I was stupid. She started talking about how her car was only a Honda and she worked much harder than me. Pushing further, she finally said that she deserved a better car than an Indian because I would probably just use it to Uber people and trick them. I knew that she was throwing a fit, but never expected her to actually call a friend that owned a towing company to have my car removed from my private property. Not to mention poorly towed because it got damaged during the process. You might think I know this because I had some hidden cameras or something catching it, but nope, I knew it was her because I saw the entire thing get posted to her very public Instagram page. Yeah, she was there and took an entire video of the car being towed. During the video claiming that this is what Indians in this country deserved because it would make us realize that we should leave the country. Then it got reposted to her public Facebook page where the comments continued to fly, with her praising herself for doing this, saying soon I would be gone and things would be better because of it. I have thick skin to the racism of people, you need to when you look like I do. Getting called out like that online and having my car damaged and taken away from me was something else though. That cut deep into me and I was hurt and a little scared because of what Karen did. I wanted to run and hide, but instead I found myself walking up to her to confront her about what she had done. I kept my phone in my pocket with the audio recording going just in case something happened. In this state, it is legal to record audio in a public place without the other person's consent or knowledge. Me, how could you do that and then post it online like it was funny? Karen, it was way more than funny. It was hilarious and should show everybody else from your dirty country what will happen if they come here. Me, I had every right to buy that car and park it in my driveway. You, on the other hand, decided to tow it away and destroy the paint shop. Then went and bragged about it behind a camera. Karen, it doesn't matter what I did to you. A judge would only see the color of my skin and realize that I'm right and you're wrong. Hell, he would probably give me your car if I just said it was mine and you stole it. Me, and maybe I can make sure that any place you try and get a job will see those videos you posted. You work with the school district, right? I'm sure they would love to know what kind of person is working for them. Karen, how dare you threaten me? She pulls out her phone and calls the cops, claiming that a crazy man has cornered her in the street and is assaulting her. Then she hangs up the phone and turns back to me with a crap-eating grin. Karen, now you're going to jail and get probably deported. Me, I'm not anywhere near you, I did not even touch you. Karen, that won't matter once I tell the cops that you threatened to assault me too. I knew that I had my recordings and decided to just wait until the police arrived so she could dig herself into a bigger hole. Letting her tell them everything she threatened to while I pulled another officer aside and played them the recordings. With her admitting what she had done to my car and even admitting her plan to lie in order to get me arrested. The officers talking to her had every intention of arresting me until they also heard what I had on my recording. I also pulled up the video of her towing my car with her racist comments, and it was enough for them to tell Karen that she was lying and I was not gonna get arrested for anything. She got so mad she attempted to start coming after me, clawing for the phone since it had the evidence against her. The police restrained her quickly and she was arrested on the spot. Calling the police when it is not an emergency and lying in order to get somebody arrested are both criminal offenses that you can be sure I was pressing charges on. Not to mention pressing charges for Grand Theft Auto, as I had proof that she stole my car. The video even gave me proof that it was damaged in her towing and not a prior condition of the car. Her friend was also gonna be charged for towing my car illegally, and her business got in a ton of trouble and almost shut down because of it. Back to Karen though, instead of trying to defend her actions in court, she felt it was best to try and attack me by claiming I was in this country illegally, making my money from driving a taxi and probably not even reporting my income. That was when she learned that I was born here and my job made it so I could afford one hell of an attorney. Due to the nature of the video, I even got hate crime added onto her list of charges. I wanted the money to get the paint job repaired on my car, and let me tell you that it was not cheap. Due to her actions though, I also filed for a restraining order that would keep Karen away from me. It was easily granted, and that was the last I had to deal with her. The other criminal charges were between her and the state, but since I still see her around, I guess she did not end up going to prison, unfortunately. And here, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed the title story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. And now let's move on to the next pro-revenge story. Here is the backstory. I work as a full-time paramedic in a moderately busy service. Recently, we have had the pleasure, privilege and honor to be used as a taxi service for an extra special piece of crap who calls 911 with a variety of fake complaints so he can get a free ride from his home 20 miles away to the hospital, where he typically refuses to even go inside and then will simply walk down the street and buy heroin he then takes home and deals to all of his piece of crap friends. Now, I say free because an ambulance bill can range anywhere from between $500 to $1,000 depending on the nature of the call, miles driven, etc. One would think this is an expensive taxi ride, and it would be, except that this douche nozzle had flat out said to us on multiple occasions that he has no intention of ever paying his bill. And since he has Medicaid and has no medically necessary reason for going, we don't even get any money from insurance. So refuse to take him, right? Alas, if only it were that simple. For those who don't know, if you call 911 regardless of your complaint, heart attack or toe fungus, we have to transport you if you wanna go. A few weeks ago we went to pick this crap stain up when he called for chest pain. He is in his 20s, we get there and he is standing on his deck smoking a cigarette and laughing with a very unamused firefighter. We start talking to him, and when I ask him what he is hoping the ER will do for him today, his response is, dunno, get evaluated? Followed by a snarky laugh. Now, he legitimately does have a history of a recent infection in his heart from using so much heroin himself. However, he got booted out of the hospital that was trying to treat him when they caught him sneaking out to buy heroin and then using and dealing from his room. So now fast forward back to the present. We, one of my partners and I, took him a couple of weeks ago to a different hospital than he usually goes to after a big long argument with him about his frequent trips and the fact that he has been sometimes refusing to even go inside the ER, telling crews that the nurses are mean to him, he doesn't feel safe, etc. and so forth, before walking out of the ambulance down the street to buy drugs. When I brought this up to him, he got super pissy, accusing me of not believing that he is sick, which I don't because he isn't, and mistreating him because he is an addict and blah blah blah. On a whim, I called the hospital he's been using as his designated go-to right down the road from his suppliers, and I got a doctor who knew exactly who he was and what his bullcrap angle is, and he told us to leave his ass there and not transport him. When he was informed of this, he lost his mind, yelling and flipping furniture over and having an all-around very amusing temper tantrum before slamming the door to his house. Now the revenge. My partner I was working with that day told me that while I was on the phone with the hospital, he went inside his house and came back out stuffing a knife in his pocket. I called our dispatch as well as supervisor and told them about the douche canoe, his temper tantrum and the knife. They called the sheriff's department, who also dispatched the fire department, and they put him on a house watch. What this means is that from now on, any time that he calls 911, neither us nor the fire department will come until the police have gone first, regardless of what he is calling for. Additionally, we talked with our medical director and he is now on a call before you haul list, meaning anytime he wants a ride to the hospital, we can call a doctor and get permission to refuse to transport him, even if he is requesting or in this case demanding transport. And yeah, ripe stars, I seriously have no empathy or respect for people that abuse 911 or EMTs in this case. This is really one of the lowest things you can do. Either way, the next one is titled Ex Revenge for Lying. So I was getting divorced in the early 90s, my ex was pissed that I was divorcing him, I owned the house prior to the marriage, so he moved out but he broke back in and tore up all kinds of things, tore up my jewelry, my clothes, he cut holes in all of them, etc. I couldn't prove it, but of course it was him. When we went to divorce court, he gave the judge a 2-page list of things that he supposedly brought through the house with him prior to marriage that I refused to return. My attorney showed me the list and it was stuff that he never owned in the first place. He totally wanted me thrown in jail for contempt of court. My alternative ways to pay like $2,000 and I was not about to do that. I'm opted for jail, but my friends kept telling me just to pay it. I refused. 2 days before I was about to appear in court, a girlfriend of mine asked if she could see the list. Sure enough, she noted that things he said were there did not give much if any of a description. For example, he says there is a gun and he didn't say what kind of gun. He said there was a computer and he didn't say what kind of computer and so on. Her point was that if I went around and bought everything on the list, it would probably cost me about $200 and that was worth staying out of jail for. I agreed, knowing it would also be worth him being livid that his plan didn't work, so I made a game out of it. I went around to pawn shops and resale stores and I told whoever was in charge there that I was on a scavenger hunt and I briefly explained what was going on. They all loved the idea and helped me get through my list rather quickly. Here are some lovely examples of what was boxed up for him. As for the gun, it was an old rusty cap gun. The screwdriver set, same old and rusty. For the clothing, Goodwill horrid stuff. For the bust/statue, made one myself from clay knives. As for the old and rusty camping gear, an old pan, matches and a tiny tarp. And one of my favorites that I remember was, he said he had a Monopoly game, so I sent him a Goodwill find without any of the pieces, just a board. I wish I could remember everything that we got. It was so much fun, and when we got home, we had to do videotape boxing them all up and going through the items one by one. My attorney told the judge that I had found at the attic and I just hadn't seen it before. So sorry. The judge told my attorney to simply drop the box off at his attorney's office and that the divorce was final. My only regret is not being able to see his face when he opened up that box of garbage. And by the way, there was nothing he could say because he made the stuff up in the first place. It's been 30 years and I still get joy thinking about it. And as usual, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So I, 38 female, live alone in the house I grew up in. It was left to me by my mother after she passed away 10 years ago. About 4 years ago, a couple about my age moved in next door and we've been pretty much at odds since day one. There have been numerous times and issues that we have disagreed on. I have 3 cats that I sometimes let out into my backyard. My neighbors have a dog that would jump the 5-foot chain link fence separating our yards to chase my cats. I told my neighbors if I caught their dog doing it again, I would call the cops. They actually had the audacity to ask if I would be willing to split the cost of a taller privacy fence instead of, you know, training your dog not to jump the fence. Obviously, I refused as I was not the one causing the problem and the fence is technically on their property anyway. They ended up putting in a taller fence and then they asked me to split the cost of taking down an ash tree that was on their property. It had become infested with some bug that killed the tree and that limbs were falling on their driveway. They had the city come out and the survey guy said the tree was actually about 10% on my property. I told them the tree was theirs and if they want it down they will have to pay for it because I don't have a problem with it. Needless to say, we are not friends. They've also thrown some loud late night parties that included bonfires and loud music that I had to call the cops for as well. I'm currently out of town visiting family for a couple of weeks. I have a friend who comes over to my house every day to check on my cats and check for mail and packages. I have medication for my cats that are delivered regularly. I got a notification the other day that some packages were delivered, so I texted my friend to let them know. But before my friend could get there, I got a notification from my Ring doorbell. I pulled up the live feed and saw my neighbor on my patio. I asked him what he was doing and he said a package of theirs got delivered to my house by mistake, so he was just grabbing it. I told him to leave and that my friend would bring over his package when she comes over. He said he's not waiting for that and tried to leave. I told him if he takes a package from my porch, I'm calling the cops. He then shoved the package in front of the camera and said, "That's my name and address, OP, I'm taking the package." And then he walked away. So then I called the police and told them that he stole a package from me and I have video proof. They said they would investigate. When my friend got there a little later, the police were talking to my neighbors. The police must have left while she was checking on my cats, because when she went to leave, it was just my neighbors outside. The husband yelled at her to tell me that I'm a huge a-hole and that I need to take the police off speed dial and let them deal with more important issues, instead of using them as my own personal problem-solving service. So yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? Someone on Reddit said, "You are the a-hole, I get the fence thing, you could have pitched in on the tree just to chill things out. Calling the cops about the parties without talking to them about it first is very a-hole-ish." If it was his package and it had their name and address on it, calling the cops on them was also an a-hole move. You're officially an a-hole neighbor now. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole. Sure, you don't get along, but stop calling the cops for trivial matters. Do you actually think they were stealing a package, or were you just trying to continue this grudge and be petty? Comment number 3, you know, I really wanted to think that this was an everyone problem, a two-sided feud between neighbors that is slowly getting out of hand. But the more I read this, the more I think you are the a-hole, and any sympathy I have for you regarding your neighbor's activities is merely the result of the spin you have placed on events. I think you are that neighbor. To the point on this current event, you know what things you have ordered. Even if you cannot read the name and address held up to your camera, you ought to be able to determine with 10 minutes effort whether that even could have been your package or not. And I bet it wasn't. I bet it was their misdelivered package and they didn't trust you to get it to them if they didn't take the initiative and reclaim it themselves, given the obvious animus you hold towards them. I don't think I blame them, and for the record, if that tree was 10% on your property, then in most US jurisdictions it's considered a boundary tree and the two property owners share joint responsibility. You should have offered your proportional 10% of the removal costs. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. HOA destroyed my garden and ripped out my trees. I fought the HOA tyrants and won. I'm just going to come right out and say it, that I don't have a problem with the HOA where I live exactly. What I do have a problem with is the guy that is basically in charge of the HOA, who got the job because he had a bunch of his friends voting him in. If you looked up power hungry in the dictionary, you would find a picture of this guy. The only reason that he wanted to be in charge was to just be a dictator over everyone else and act like he was better. It was absolute hell for a while, as he decided to enforce what rules he wanted, when he wanted, and honestly, I think he made stuff up on the go. Of course, he never did this to any of his buddies and overdid it to anyone that he had a problem with. Now, some of you might be wondering how the two of us tie together, and that is a bit of a crazy story. Me and my friends ended up on this guy's radar, and we honestly were not exactly sure how. I don't recall crossing paths with him, but my guess is that word got around that I didn't like him and was calling him a dictator with my friends. Anyway, he started trying to fine us for every tiny thing, from us not bringing our trash bins in early enough to having our grass half an inch too long. Really scummy stuff, so obviously we all decided that he was going too far and we needed to do something about it. None of us are really the confrontational type though, so I decided to do the tamer approach and call the HOA board demanding that he step down and be replaced. My friends did the same thing and we hoped that maybe our complaints would change something. It did end up changing something, but not the way that we wanted. Instead of him stepping down or maybe being a little less like a dictator, he got even worse. I did not even know what was happening at first, so I will tell you just what I came home to one day later. My entire garden was dug up and even one of my small trees was removed. Left in my mailbox was a note from the HOA talking about how my garden was going against some kind of standard and that they removed it within their rights. I was livid because I knew that there was no way they could have gotten away with this. First and most importantly, there was nothing about my flower garden that was going against HOA rules. In fact, the only garden rule in it was that any vegetable gardens needed to be in the backyard exclusively. This was flowers though, not related. Second of all, the proper course of action would be to leave me a note or one of those finds he loves so much. I knew this was personal. I called up my friends and found out that their yards were messed with also, and big shocker, nobody else's was. Obviously, he found out about the phone calls and wanted to show off his power trip some more. We were not going to stand for this and instead decided we were going to sue the HOA for damages to our property. Obviously, this guy had too big of an ego and was going to fight it all the way to the courts. All the meanwhile still sending us bogus fines for no other reason than to show that he can. We were just going to wait patiently until our day in court was ready and we could explain to a judge what he had done. It turns out that they were more than right when it came to him not being allowed to remove things even if they did violate the HOA guidelines. Something in the bylaws talked about how unless something was deemed an emergency and was a danger, they could not act at all. They also could not act unless a certain number of warnings and discussions were given. The example the judge used was if we had a dead tree that we were not going to get rid of and ignoring the HOA telling us to, then they had the rights to come onto the property and do it. So right there, he got a good telling off for not following the rules and regulations that he was in fact in charge of exerting. Second and juicier is the fact that of course him destroying our properties had nothing to do with HOA rules and was basically trespassing and destruction of property. We all won some money for damages and I walked away with a clean $37,000 to replant my garden and pay my lawyer. My friends also got some money, but of course there was a bigger issue that we needed to take care of. Now, even though he lost in court, that dictator was still president of the HOA, and even with winning against him in court, it did not feel like enough revenge. It was not like any of the money came out of his pocket anyway. Plus, he was still going to be around to harass us even harder for beating him in court. We were not going to rest until this guy was so hated he would not have a choice to stay in power. You might be wondering how 3 ladies in a neighborhood could accomplish something like that, and the answer is one simple word: gossip. We were going to use that same gossip mill that probably got us on his bad side to take him down. We were getting the word of what he did spread so far that not a single neighbor could go for a walk without someone asking if they heard about the HOA president trespassing and destroying gardens. We finally hit a point that everyone in the neighborhood, most of which didn't care about the HOA until now, hated this tyrant. The only ones that were not against him were his buddies, but that was a small number in comparison. We bombarded every single HOA meeting demanding that he stepped down out of power. Now, you can already tell based on his ego that he was not going to just give up and let someone else step up easily. The thing was that even though he treated his position like a monarchy, where he was the sole ruler, that was simply not true. The board could overrule him and basically force him to step down in fear of total anarchy from the neighbors. We were threatening to ignore every single bylaw and do whatever we wanted, since he was just going to fine people he did not like for nothing anyway. They had no other option than to give up backing him up and tell him that he had to step down. A revote was cast and someone much more down to earth was given the job. I have not heard anything about him since then, and the HOA is being run much more smoothly now with the new guy in charge, with more of a focus on the community working together. And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say that is a very happy ending, and certainly also an encouragement for people that might be in similar living situations, aka dealing with a crazy HOA president. And this story just proves that if you bond together with other neighbors and try to change something, that it actually might work. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.